Hello and welcome to week 10 of SOL Prep. We're going to be studying linear inequalities and systems of linear inequalities. The first example here is which of these four graphs A, B, C, D represents the graph of the inequality y is greater than or equal to plus 1. The first thing I want to remind you of is which ones are greater than and which one are less than, so that you see problems like this you can remember which one is which. Think of the L for less than, you can write it here, and think of the G for greater than. Now hidden inside each one of these letters is the symbol. The symbol for less than kind of goes this way, the symbol for greater than goes this way. So that way you can always remember this symbol on the G matches what we have here. That's how I know it's greater than. We're going to have the calculator graph this inequality for us, and I'm going to show you how that's done. Your calculator has an app that graphs inequality, so we're going to press the app button. In your calculator, it'll be the third option. This calculator has lots more apps, so I have to keep scrolling down until I find it. And you're going to be looking for that app that says Inequal. You're going to be graphing. It may show up with the Z. It may not show up with the Z. As long as it says Inequal, that's the one you want. You press Enter. It's going to say press any key, so you do that. And then the options for inequality symbols are going to show up down here. All you have to do is press alpha and then the inequality symbol you want. So we want a greater than or equal to. We find that right here. And the corresponding button is this graph button. So you're going to press alpha and then this corresponding button, and as you can see, it changes your equal sign to the inequality symbol that you have. All you have to do is scroll right to get out of the way of the inequality, and then you type your inequality. I'm going to show you something here. If I try to enter the fraction the way we're used to doing the alpha y, as you can see, nothing pops up. It doesn't really work. So you're going to have to type your fraction the old-fashioned way inside parentheses. Put a parenthesis, then a 1, then the fraction line, which is the same as divide, then a 2, close the parenthesis, and then keep going with the x plus 1. It seems like inside this app, the alpha y enter does not work to enter your fractions, but that's okay. We know how to put it in parentheses. All you have to do now is hit graph and match your line with one of these four graphs. Notice that this graph shows solid. If it were dashed, the calculator would show that, but it does not show dashed. It shows a solid line. So we're not going to be picking either option B or option D because those are dashed. And it has the shading above the line, not below the line. So A is not an option, and our option is C. Just to show you how the dashed line would look like, if we come over here to y equals and I replace that with the greater than symbol that does not have a line underneath, let me show you what that line would look like so that you can tell the dashed lines apart. See, the dashed lines clearly show as dashed. In this next problem, they ask you which inequality does the shaded region of this graph represent? Because the equations need to be in slope-intercept form for you to be able to enter them here, as well as inequalities need to be in slope-intercept form to enter them in here, we're going to have to rewrite these inequalities, but it is a very simple process. Just remember that slope-intercept form is y, I'm going to write equal sign, but it could be an inequality, mx plus b. So all you have to do is take the x term and subtract it out to cancel it out. And what you do on one side, you do on the other. And so now you have y is less than or equal to the negative 3x plus 2. Notice that all that happened was that this negative 3x ends up being right there. So the same thing is going to happen in each of these equations. Each of these inequalities, to use the correct term. And you have negative 3x plus 2, same deal here. y is less than or equal to negative 3x minus 2. And the last one, y is greater than or equal to negative 3x minus 2. You have them all ready and set up to enter here in your calculator to see which one matches. So you can start entering this first one. Let me circle it in, let's see, in green so that you can see it. We're going to be doing this one first. Go to your equal symbol, press alpha, and then the matching inequality symbol, less than or equal to, right here. Scroll over to the right and type your inequality. Hit graph, see if it matches. So this looks very, very similar to what we have here. It's a solid line, just like we're seeing here, shaded below. So A is an option. Let's just check all the other ones, make sure. Gonna try option B now here, which is y is greater than or equal to. So standing on this symbol, press alpha, and now greater than or equal to change it. Scroll to the right by pressing here, move to the right, type your inequality, and hit graph. This one clearly does not look like what we have here, so we can scratch that one out. Let's try this purple one here. Go to your inequality, just hit clear. To make it free again, you want now a less than or equal to symbol, so press alpha and then the less than or equal to symbol. Move over to the right, type your inequality, hit graph, and your inequality is graphing. Now you might think this looks very similar, but check where the graph crosses the y-axis. It crosses down here in the negatives. Your graph here is crossing right here in positive 2. Your inequality here crosses down here in negative 2. And that's why I wanted to keep going so that you can see the difference. Because sometimes you might graph this one first and think that you're done. You really have to compare the y-intercepts to make sure they match. So these look similar, but this is not the option. And just so you can see how all the options are done, you take this one, type it in your calculator, hit graph, and you're going to see that it does not match either. So your option here, we have confirmed that A was our answer. In this problem, they ask you which shaded region represents the solution to the system of linear inequalities. One of these. This one is already set up perfectly for us to enter in our calculator. The next one, however, is not in slope-intercept form, so we need to fix that. Remember that what you do is you subtract the x term from both sides. What that means is that that x term is now going to fall right there. So your inequality at this point is going to have, let me make that clearer, it's going to have a negative 2x to the left, negative 2y to the left of the inequality symbol, and it's going to have the minus 3x and then the minus 12 on the right hand side. Because what you really want is just to have the y by itself and then the inequality symbol, this negative 2 here still needs to be divided out. So what you do, divide by negative 2, and here divide by negative 2. And you're going to have to remember that when you divide by a negative number in an inequality, it causes the inequality symbol to flip direction. So it's now going to be like this. You're going to have the y. And to type this in your calculator, you can just put the top numerator in parentheses like that, and then the division symbol, and then the negative 2. You can enter it like this as your second inequality, and that's what we're going to do in our calculator. Move over to your equal sign so that you can select the symbol. We're going to do this first one. That is a less than or equal to, so you press alpha and then less than or equal to. Move over to the right, type your inequality, Then move over to y2. Y2 would be this other inequality. It has a less than without an underline, so when you move over to on top of the equal sign, you select the less than with no line under it. Right here, move over to the right, type your inequality. Remember, we can't do alpha, y, enter to do our fractions, so we're going to put a numerator in our parentheses here, negative 3x minus 12, and all of that is divided by negative 2. Now you can hit graph. Your graph is going to show a solid line going down here and a dashed line going up from left to right. And the solution is the double shaded area, in other words, the overlap of the two right here in the bottom. So that's what you're looking for over here. This has a solid going down and a dash going up like we need, but the shaded area is wrong. In B, the dashed line is going down, and the one that's going down is not the one that's supposed to be dashed, so that's not it. But in option C, we see the correct shaded area, correct dashed line going up to the right, correct solid line going down to the right. D has the same shaded area, but the dashed and solid line are swapped, so they're different from what you have here. So your option C is your answer.
In this next problem, they give you a system of inequalities right here. Remember that a system means more than one, two or more. I want you to click on, in the SOL, you're going to have to use your cursor and click on the points. But here we're going to have to circle them or select each point that is a solution to the system of inequalities. Remember that a point is really a set of an x and a y together. An x and a y, all of them are an x and a y, an x and a y. These x and y values are the values that they want us to use for x and y in each one of the options. So what we can do is start checking each point in our calculator, and the point has to work for both inequalities. Here's how to do that. Let's start with the first point right here. For that point, we have an x of negative 1. So because this is a calculator, we enter the numbers first and then the letters. You have a negative 1 and you're going to store it in the x. You hit enter and the calculator confirms. Got it. X is negative 1. Then you're going to enter for the y a negative 3. So to tell the calculator the y is negative 3, you type in the negative 3, you press the store button because you're going to put it away into the y. To access the letter menu, you're going to hit alpha. It turns your keyboard or your keys here into letters, and you see the y right above here, the 1. Press y, hit enter. So the calculator tells you, yes, got it, y is negative 3. So what you're going to do is we're going to work with the first inequality one at a time. And I'm going to type each side of the inequality. So I have the inequality with this symbol here. The y on the left side of the inequality is just the y value here, negative 3. And then to do this right hand side of the inequality, which is this whole thing, I can do that in my calculator. You can press green Y enter to do your fractions. You're going to do 1/2. Then just a regular x, because the calculator already knows what x is, plus 1. And you're going to get a 1/2. So that goes on this side of the inequality. And then you read what it says. It says negative 3 is greater than. If you get confused about greater than or less than, always recall the L for less than, the G for greater than. Which one does this symbol contain? It contains this little part here, the G. So this is greater than. And a negative number is never greater than a positive number. So it does not give me a true statement. So I'm not even going to check the second inequality. This point doesn't work. So let's try working with this point now. Now you have to go back to your calculator and tell the calculator that the value for x has changed. Now 1 gets stored into the x and 2 gets stored into the y. So now the calculator knows the new values of x and y. And what we have now is the y is 2, then the greater than, and let's figure out what the right hand side of the inequality is. Type it in again. And this time you get 3/2. Is the number 2 bigger than 3/2? If you're not sure what the 3/2 is, you can always do 3 divided by 2 to look at the decimal. That's 1.5. So if you feel better writing down the 1.5, go ahead and do that. And yes, 2 is bigger than 1.5. So that's true. So what you're going to do now is check to see if that point also works in the second inequality, because it must work in both. So this side of the inequality has a bunch of stuff there. Let's have the calculator do that for us. You just type in the y, then the plus 3x. That's the left side of the inequality. That gives you a 5. Then you have the inequality symbol, and then you have the number 12. If you get confused, wait a minute, does this mean less than or greater than? Remember, this looks like the L, so it says 5 is less than 12. That's also true. So if it was true for both inequalities, then you would select this point. Because it says to click each point, just because we found one solution doesn't mean we're done. We're going to have to check all the other points. So let's check this point where x is 2 and y is 0. So the first thing we need to do is tell the calculator that. A 2 gets stored in the x, and a 0 gets stored in the y, to do the y, alpha y. Now that the calculator knows what x and y are, you can start checking the first inequality here. This inequality says y is greater than. Because we already know that in this case the y is 0, that really says 0 is greater than, and then you go to your calculator, type in the right hand side of the inequality, this one right here, just like that, hit enter. It says 2. 0 is greater than 2 is what it really says here. Is that true? 0 greater than 2? No, it's not true. So I'm not even going to bother checking the second inequality because the point must work for both, and it already doesn't work for the first one, so I scratch this one out. So we move on to the next one. In this point, x is 4 and y is 6, so you got to tell the calculator that. 4 gets stored into the x and 6 gets stored into the y. Once you have that, remember that we are doing the first inequality here. The y is going to be whatever y value you have, which is a 6. It says it's greater than, and then this part, just let the calculator do the complicated parts. Type in the right hand side of your inequality and you get a 3. This says 6 is greater than, because this symbol is facing the same way as the letter G. And that's true. So we move on to check the second inequality by doing this more complicated part in our calculator. Type it in with the letters and you get an 18. It says less than or equal to right here, and then it has a 12. Well, I know it's less than because the symbol here reminds me of the L for less than. Is 18 less than 12? No. So even though for this point it worked for the first inequality, it did not work for the second one. It must work in both, so I may not select that option. There's only one of them that worked. Thank you.